Book 7, The Soldier in the Middle of the World, Chapter 3. General, we have news about... That morning and afternoon, Shin was able to avoid General Thorn. It wasn't as if he was doing so on purpose. It was just that, well, Shin found things that needed to be done and didn't want to get in the way of Thorn, who was planning the next day's offensive with a close-hanging Captain Lick. Only twice did Shin exchange words with Thorn. The first time was as Shin was leaving breakfast with Glasser to receive a tour of the fort, just as Thorn was arriving to eat. Thorn smiled at Shin's new uniform and nodded at the label. No one's available to make the new one yet, so they just scrubbed out the old one and stitched it back on. But we'll work on that as soon as we get to Idemia. The second time Shin saw the general was when the last group of soldiers was leaving to harvest more farms. Shin asked Thorn for permission to accompany the soldiers. They're going to the southernmost farms by the border, Shin explained. I thought it might be a good opportunity for me to see our jumping-off point into Idemia. I should be learning the terrain, correct, sir? Thorn had smiled, while Captain Lick took a deep, angry breath. Lick seemed to always be watching him, from windows, from doorways, and at that moment, from right next to Thorn. So Shin spent the entire day away, hoping for a quiet moment to think about Glasser's words and the notion of delivering. But he didn't get to ponder, because his time was taking up surveying the farms, showing soldiers where to dig, and speaking to the farmers about what else might be salvageable. He even took off his brand new jacket so he could dig into the dirt to feel for every last potato, or to discover if any more carrots were hiding under the ash. Not even the officers questioned why a first-year corporal was allowed so much freedom of movement. They just glanced at his name and got out of his way. Besides, the soldiers listened to him, and everything he said seemed to be the right thing to do. By dinner time, the soldiers were exhausted as they marched back to the fort. Corporal Shin accompanied them, allowing a soldier who became ill to ride his black horse, as Shin held the reins and walked alongside. He chatted with some of the soldiers, asking them about their provinces, finding out how long they had served, and gathering their ideas as to what happened to cause the world to lose all color. The soldiers first answered him tentatively, until they realized he was just like them. By the time they returned to the fort, the cluster of about 30 men walking with Shin were singing one of Captain Nelt's less risky compositions for the poor corporal who hadn't yet heard Nelt's full repertoire of songs for the lovesick soldier. General Thorn was waiting at the gates, and the men came to attention as they passed. Corporal Shin saluted as well until Thorn beckoned him with his left hand. Shin obeyed, still leading the horse with the ill soldier. Do you need something, sir? This soldier needs to get to the surgeons. The general sighed. Someone else can do that, son, he said quietly. I've missed your company today. Many things you could have learned by my side. Shin shrugged. I think Captain Lick would prefer I stayed out of the way, sir. Thorn waved that away. I don't care about Lick's preferences. I'm more concerned about your learning to command an offensive. But, sir, I don't think I'm ready for that. I spent the day learning about how soldiers work. When I understand how they work, I'll know better how to plan an offensive for them. That's how you began as well, sir, right? For the offensive at Moorland? Thorn's smile seemed genuine. You have a point. Very astute. But considering who you are, why should I expect anything less? Shin shifted uncomfortably, not sure what he meant by that last sentence. Sir, he whispered, the soldier here, may I take him and also return the horse? Be quick about it. We need to eat dinner, then discuss the plans for the offensive. Elements of it have to do with Moorland. Corporal Shin sighed in relief to have avoided the general again, but it wouldn't last. As he delivered the feverish soldier to the surgery wing, he was surprised to see it packed with victims from the mudslide. They filled up every bed, and dozens more were lying on the floor between them. Shin's heart sank at the sight of so many incapacitated men. Seeing Shin supporting the ailing man, an assistant approached. "Another one pulled from the river?" he asked in a bored tone. "No, sir," Shin whispered, to keep the news from anyone else. "He took ill while we were digging the farms. High fever, aches, and he seems almost delusional." The assistant looked worriedly at the soldier who could barely stand. "Oh, we don't need this right now," he whispered, and beckoned for Shin to follow him to a small room where 2 visiting surgeons were staying. One of the men reading on his bed looked up. "No, I am not giving up my bed." "A fever," the assistant hissed. The surgeon jumped off the bed to allow Shin to lay down the soldier. Nervously, the second surgeon stared at the man. "Corporal, how many men was he near today?" "Dozens, sir." The first surgeon groaned as he checked Shin's name badge. "Oh, Crete, you're him, aren't you? Thorne's found one? And you've been supporting that soldier." The assistant shut the door. "What are we going to do?" Shin squinted at the surgeons and assistant. "You suspect the pox, don't you?" The 3 men exchanged startled looks. "Don't worry," Shin whispered. "I can't get it." "How do you know?" one of them demanded. Shin started to speak until he realized all his knowledge about the pox came from the other side of the mountains. When Ralph had tried to bring him home, it seemed like moons ago that he argued with his oldest brother in the forest, but it was just over a week. Ralph told him the pox was returning to Salem and the world, but while the Briders were susceptible, the Shins seemed to be immune. "I just know I can't get it. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone else. I'm expected at dinner," he said in a rush, and hurried through the surgery before anyone could question him further. Shin got his dinner and turned to look for a seat among the filling tables. But General Thorne was waiting at the door to the officers' eating room with an expectant look. 5 minutes into wolfing down his dinner, focusing intently so as to avoid getting pulled into the general's conversation with some colonels, he didn't notice the commotion outside. But soon the shouting in the eating hall caused everyone to twist to see what was wrong. "General Thorne! We need General Thorne!" cried 2 muddied soldiers who stumbled into the mess hall. One of the men cried out when he saw the food line and rushed to the head of it. Thorne had stood up quickly and started for the door before Shin realized who the men were. He jumped to his feet and followed to greet the scouts they had sent to the north. "General, we have news about—" one of the scouts began before Thorne cut him off. "Not here," he hissed. "Get your plates and follow me. Glasser, Ferrum," Thorne called to the private room. The 2 colonels were already on their way to join him. "Shin with us," the general ordered. Captain Look stood at the door. "Sir, do you need my assistance?" "No," Thorne barked as he marched out of the packed hall, ignoring the enraged expression on Lick's pallid face. Thorne led the scouts, who were snatching food off their plates as they jogged after the general, to the command office. "Let them finish eating first, General," Colonel Ferrum suggested, as the men collapsed into chairs. "They look half-starved." "Which is why I'm worried," Thorne said, steadying the 2 men from behind the desk. "They're half-starved because they found nothing to eat since I sent them out yesterday morning, correct?" The first scout nodded as he gulped down his food. "Sir, the situation's far worse than we imagined." He glanced at the second scout for confirmation. His companion nodded. "We did our best to make it to the fort at Province 4, but—" He looked back at the first scout, unsure of how to continue. "But?" Thorne repeated. The first man licked his lips. "Sir, I don't think it exists anymore." "What?" Ferrum cried. "How can it not exist? What's in its place?" "Sirs, to be honest, we didn't make it there," the first man said. "We got as far as Province 6. I mean, whatever Rivers is, sir. There's hardly anything left of it." Thorne stared, trying to comprehend what they meant. "Hardly anything left?" Glasser said, bewildered. Explain yourself." The second scout tried. "It looked like around here, but worse. Here the mudslide was maybe 6 feet deep, but in Rivers, where the river splits into two, and the left fork going to the southeast, sirs, it was so deep that everything, and I mean everything, is covered. Maybe 40 feet deep. No trees, no buildings, no fort, not even the river. Sirs, it's all gone. And if Rivers is gone, Mount seen further north must be gone, as might be Quake. We couldn't even find the fork of the river that goes there. It's just mud and ash and—" The scout's voice grew hoarse and dropped off as he buried his face into his hands. "His woman and daughter live in Quake," his companion explained quietly. "What about Edge?" Thorne whispered, forgetting the random province number he gave it 2 years ago. "No way of knowing, sir," the first scout said. "But, General, it was Mount Deceit. It was cloudy up there until this morning, when the sun came out briefly. That's when we realized the clouds weren't clouds. It's more like smoke and steam. General, colonels, there is no more Mount Deceit. Only an enormous gap between the other peaks. And all the smoke and steam is coming from it. Even Mid-Plain and all the way down to Vines is devastated. We found only one tower still up in Mid-Plain, but no one alive. Everything else was covered. Pools is the only village along this river that survived, sir. Perhaps Winds is still in the east, maybe Scrub and Grasses to the west, Sands as well, but we couldn't find any way to get there. The ash was so deep in the north. If any of it blew to the west, then—" Now the first scout sagged in his chair, overwhelmed. Corporal Thorne Shinn hadn't moved, leaning against the wall, astonished at the news. The villages he'd just marched through no longer existed. None of the fields, the animals, the people. Perhaps the scientists in Idemia were correct. There was nothing left in the northern world to attack. His knees began to buckle. Thorne stared at a spot on the desk. "Are you saying that there is little left? No significant numbers of people in those villages?" The scouts glanced at each other, dumbfounded that the general couldn't grasp the enormity of the disaster. "Sir, there aren't even any villages left," the first scout exclaimed. "Pools is the most intact place we've seen. Sir, no supplies will be coming. We don't even have a home to go back to." Something hit Shinn's mind. The route to Salem. Edge was to the northeast, with several mountain peaks between it and Mount Deceit. What had Ralph said? Guide Zenas was getting everyone out because something was coming. The guide had seen it, and Shinn had ignored it. He was trapped. There were 3 routes to home. The Moreland Deceit one, which was hopelessly gone. Then the Edge route, which deposited travelers into Salem. Then finally, in the far west beyond Sands and the desert was the longest route, a big half-loop past Terrap's lands, then north, then east again. Shinn's chest tightened. He didn't even know that route, never paid attention to it on the maps in Pugga's office. He hadn't planned on going home, but he always knew he could if he really had to. But now there was no going home. All escape was gone. He was completely trapped, with nowhere to fly. And what might have happened to Salem? He didn't notice something was wrong as everything around him began to grow gray, although he should have recognized that feeling, having experienced it many times before. There was nothing left in his power to stop anything. He heard shouts and found himself lying on the floor, staring up in the concerned face of General Thorne bent over him. The side of his head pounded. "Son, son!" "He's coming around." "Are you all right?" "Jurgis, get him some water." "Corporal, you gave me quite a start there." Colonel Glasser was unbuttoning the corporal's jacket as Shinn struggled to sit up. "No, son," said the colonel quietly. "Don't get up. You hit your head pretty hard on the desk when you passed out. Just stay down for a few minutes." Colonel Ferrum squatted next to him with a mug. Glasser helped Shin sit up briefly to drink, then laid him back down. The weary scouts remained on their chairs, watching the corporal with sympathy, because they understood exactly how he felt. "I'm sorry, sirs," Shin whispered. "I don't know what happened. His head swirled again in the terror that there might not be any going home, and he closed his eyes. Thorn went down on one knee next to him to pat his cheek. "I know what happened. You've had quite a blow. I'm very sorry. Your parents probably didn't even know what hit them. They likely went to sleep the night before and didn't even wake up before the slide covered them." A tear leaked from Shin's eyes. Thorn leaned closer. "I told you it was no accident that you came to me," he whispered. "And I've also told you that I'd take care of you. I will, son, better than any father ever could. You just rest right now and don't worry about anything. I can handle everything." Through the cracks in his eyelids, Shin noticed Ferrum and Glasser exchange glances. Thorn got up, put his left hand on one of the scout's shoulders, and looked at the other, his eyes surprisingly gentle. "You men have had a very difficult 2 days. Go lie down for a couple of hours and then we'll get a full report from you. I want as many details as you can produce. Mud depths, ash depths, number of survivors. At first light tomorrow, we'll send scouts to Winds and try to get over to Quake." He nodded to the scout whose family was there. "I'm sure Grasses has been preserved, even though we haven't heard from them, but we'll check there as well. You men have done good work. Colonel Glasser will see to your comfort." Glasser, looking surprised, hastily got up and opened the door. "Men," Thorn said before they left the office, "not a word of this to anyone. Not until we know how to tell the story. All right?" Glasser scoffed quietly and exchanged the same look with Ferrum. Shin knew cynicism when he saw it, even blurrily. Thorn regarded Shin, whose chest was still rising and falling rapidly, almost with sympathy, and must have assumed the corporal couldn't hear him with his eyes mostly closed. "Jurgis," Thorn whispered to Colonel Ferrum, who stood next to him, "we're going to have 6,000 more reacting just like Shin if we don't handle the story correctly." Ferrum turned to the general. "Lemuel, you can't hide the truth. The men have to know. They're going to find it out when they head back north now, won't they?" Thorn flicked a piece of dust off his jacket. "How could it possibly be as bad as they say? Who's ever heard of villages vanishing completely under mud? It's absurd." Then how do you explain their report?" "Simple. Trauma," he said, studying Shin on the floor, who surreptitiously studied him back. "They've seen too much, been too scared, and exaggerated what they saw. That's why I've sent them to rest. I'll send the surgeon to sedate them if they can't sleep. When they wake, I'm sure we'll have a much more accurate report of what actually happened." "Lemuel, you'll have to face the fact that what they reported is the truth." Thorn turned on him. "How could it be? When in our entire 364 years have you ever heard of a mountain exploding? Nothing left at all? It's just too unbelievable," he said with such certainty that no other options existed. "We have no evidence of it ever happening before, so it can't happen now. Logic, Jurgis. Time we started teaching that again in the schools." Now Ferrum rounded on him. "Lemuel, I sent those scouts out yesterday myself with the express command that they reach Province 4 to find out about—" He motioned aggressively to Shin, who remembered that his supposed parents lived in Province 4. "Those 2 men were solid and fearless interrogators, Not the kind to see a little mud and start panicking about the end of the world. End of the world? Lemuel scoffed. What are you talking about, Jurgis? Ferrum took a deep breath and seemed reluctant to explain. The writings. There's a passage that said that before the last day, the tallest mountain would awake. The tallest mountain, until a few days ago, was Mount Deceit. Thorn studied him for a moment. Ferrum looked sincere. Awake? Thorn sneered. What the slag does awake mean to a mountain? I had no idea you were such a writings wretch. You really think this signals the last day? Shin gulped and squeezed his eyes tightly. The last day. I'm not suggesting that I believe, Ferrum said carefully. My great-grandfather was a rector and told me the stories when I was a boy. I relate it only as a warning that other soldiers may have heard the prophecy and may react worse than... He pointed again to the corporal on the ground. The last day, Thorn sniggered. Seriously, does anyone still believe that nonsense? So if it is the last day, when will it be? Tomorrow? 20 years from now? Do the writings give a date? Ferrum sighed. No one knows. Some other things are supposed to happen too. I don't remember what they are anymore. Some prophecy? Vague reference to a mountain awakening? Then no explanation of when the last day will occur? Crete, Jurgis! I can make up a prophecy like that. So tell me, what happened to this great guide after he made this grand announcement? Ferrum looked down. The great guide was killed. Good! I'd kill him as well for such alarming nonsense. Ferrum squared his shoulders. But none of that changes the fact that there may be thousands of men who won't think it's nonsense. Or at least they'll be devastated by the fact they've lost their family and friends. Come on, Lemuel, he pleaded. You can't deny this. You can't deny everything. Thorn grabbed Ferrum's jacket with his good hand. I deny nothing, Jurgis. But I refuse to believe until I have some solid evidence. I want proof. Then get on a horse and go see for yourself. And do what with the offensive, Jurgis? He tightened his grip on the colonel. Let you lead it tomorrow evening? Is that what this is all about? You think you're going to take charge already? Ferrum pushed Thorn off and took a large step backward. The offensive? How can you even still think about the offensive? Man, we have nothing. We are it. Us and these villagers and maybe no one else. And you want to go attack Idumea. There's 100,000 people there. Even if they lost 1/5, that's still 80,000. Lemuel, when you had 20,000 soldiers and the element of surprise and an endless supply line, we could have succeeded. But now? You can't be serious. Thorn's glare turned harder than stone. I promised my boy I'd take care of him, he snarled. He's lost the only family he knew. I promised him a University of Idumea education and a lieutenant's jacket by next year. And there's only one way to accomplish that, Jurgis. I'm taking Idumea, with or without you. I've been denied my son's companionship for far too long. You can sit here and fret, but I'm taking my son home to the mansion. On the floor, Shin gritted his teeth. His son? His son? Ferrum took another step backward. Lemuel, you're not going to have much support. Is that a threat? No, my friend, just an honest evaluation. You may have found your son, but thousands of others just lost their sons, fathers, mothers, daughters, lovers. Ferrum emphasized the word to see if anything sparked in the general's eyes about Miss Amory. Nothing did. You're the only one who's going to be happy tonight, now that you can officially claim him since he has no family to protest. But Lemuel, you have no idea the pain everyone else will be feeling." "Oh, I know the pain, Yurgis," Thorn said in a steady whisper. "I've been feeling it for 26 years. But now that I finally got him, I'm not about to disappoint him." Ferrum sighed in defeat. "So what do I say to the men when I go out there?" he whispered. "The news that the scouts have returned will have spread all over the fort and camps by now." "Tell them the truth, that we're still trying to find out the details ourselves. In the meantime, tell them to sharpen their swords and get to bed early. Tomorrow's going to be a day to remember." Shoulders sagging, Ferrum stepped cautiously over the prone corporal and walked out of the office, closing the door behind him. Thorn kneeled again by Shin, who tried to sit up. "Slowly now, son, slowly." Shin nodded. "I know, I've done this before, sir, a few times." He pulled up his knees and rested his forehead on them. "You'll have to tell me about those times." Thorn tried to sound cheerful. "I'd like to hear all about your childhood." "Perhaps not tonight, sir." No. Thorn patted him on the back. "Another evening, of course. Tonight, you just rest. I won't leave your side." "That's not necessary, sir," Shin said to his knees. All he wanted was to be left alone to try to sift through the debris in his mind and grasp something that was true and real. He felt nauseated, but didn't know if that was caused by a new concussion, the news about the volcano, or the very close presence of the man actually breathing down his neck. No, I insist," Thorn said, sitting next to him on the floor. "Whatever you need, son." Shin shuddered slightly. "Sir," he mumbled, "what I really need is—" It was to not hear him say the word son again. "Go ahead," Thorn encouraged. Shin took a deep breath. "What I really need is for you to give up the attack on Idemia," he said in a rush. Thorn leaned away from him. "You can't be serious, son." "Now's not the time, sir. I heard you speaking to the colonels. If you really don't want to disappoint me, then please call off the offensive." Thorn looked around in dismay. "I can't imagine why. Why don't you want this? We discussed this." Shin rubbed his face with his hands, hoping the next words would come out right. "The offensive should be well coordinated and executed perfectly." He bravely looked the general in the eyes, although something in them frightened him. "You mentioned Moreland earlier. Nothing happened until the men were fully practiced, and then it was a quick and decisive success. Except for the parts where that black powder blew up those buildings and everything went chaotic," he babbled. "That's what I want to be a part of, General. Not the chaos, but the part before. The perfectly executed attack. The mansion can wait, sir. Let the Idumeans clean up all of Idumea for us," he said, trying to come up with a smile. "If we go in now, we'll have to supervise the cleanup. Not something I want to do, sir. Show me Idumea when it's looking its best again." The corner of Thorn's mouth went up. "Shin, once again you surprise me with an interesting take on things. Let them clean it up? Funny." He put his left hand on Shin's shoulder, and it took all of the corporal's strength not to squirm underneath it. "You intrigue me, son. The ideas you come up with, and the way you express them. Shin, I know you just lost your family, but I don't want you to feel alone. I want to claim you, officially, as my own, as my son. It's not difficult. In a public place before at least 20 people, I name you and you accept it. You are then forever the son of Lemuel Thorn." That did it. Until that moment, Shin had been able to ignore the suggestions and brush aside the irritating sun references. But no more. How binding the laws in the world were, he didn't know. But of all that he had done in the world, he simply couldn't imagine doing this one thing more. As much as he wanted to become a lieutenant, that was what he wanted, wasn't it? What he wanted was silence, the ability to think, which seemed to have eluded him. Sir, I'm overwhelmed. Too overwhelmed to think about it right now. I need some time. Is that all right? Thorn's face dropped, but he nodded. Of course. You need some time to mourn what you've lost before you can rejoice in what you're gaining. Just remember that I already think of you as my own, and perhaps you truly are. The corporal stared at him in dread, but Thorn took it as confusion. I'll explain that later, Thorn said, with a leering smile. The proclamation is only a formality. In the meantime, you can come to me for anything. So, sir, Shin began, unable to resist knowing how sure a promise that was. There's no attack on Idamia tomorrow or any time soon? Not until we hear about Edge and everyone else? Thorn squinted but nodded again. No offensive, son. Not until we have news and we agree about it together. And, sir, will you please let the other men know what happened with Mount Deceit? We could all head back north together to see what can be done and salvaged. We have the horses, the wagons, and the remaining supplies. You could tell General Sargon you'll grant him his request, so he has time to properly bury his dead. It's all in how you present it, sir. That's something I've learned from you. You still come off as the victor, but you can also earn his respect, the way you've earned mine. That the last sentence came out so smoothly surprised even Shin. Thorn smiled as genuine a smile as Shin had ever seen. All right, son. For you, anything. Corporal Shin lay on his bed staring at the dark ceiling. The nausea he felt manifested itself shortly after Thorn walked him out of the office, and then Thorn readily agreed, after calling over some privates to clean up the mess, that Shin needed time to sleep. How the rest of the men were taking the news, he didn't know. What news they'd been given, he couldn't imagine. He still wished he had something to write on, to somehow plot the intricate knot he now found himself entangled in, hoping to see a way out. He stared at the ceiling, wishing he knew what happened to Salem. It shouldn't be so much on his mind, but it was, filling every corner with trepidation. He rolled to his side, his belly empty and calming, but his head still pounding. In the shadows he saw the chair against the wall. He thought briefly of other times he'd been knocked unconscious, and had awoken to see such a chair filled with the only man who ever understood him. A tear leaked from his eye. Pugga, he dared to whisper. Yes? Pugga, he said louder, relief warming him. Where have you been? I told you I'd never leave your side. I've been here all along. But, Shin whispered, why haven't you helped me? No matter how loudly I yell, you still can't ignore me, especially when your mind is filled with ideas from Lemuel. But you've been hearing me and even repeating me. You just didn't realize it. He had to admit his mind had been filled with all kinds of thoughts, most not of his own making. So why do I hear you now? It seems you pay closer attention when you're in distress. It doesn't have to be that way, you know. You could hear me all the time, not only when you're hurting. Pugga, he whispered, what happened to Salem? To Mama, Papa, Mugga, everyone? They're safe for now. Shin sobbed quietly in relief. No devastation. I didn't say that. Salem's been hit hard, but they're led by a man who believes in preparation and doesn't follow his own ideas. Pugga, what should I do next? What do you want to do, young Pear? Not become Perrin Thorn, Blackthorn, whoever Thorn. Are you sure about that? You seem tempted by the idea. No, Pugga, there's another way. I'm sure of it. Another way to do what, young Pear? To become a lieutenant, to... Why are you still entertaining these thoughts? Pugga, I'm on top of it. Oh, no, you're not. You're not in control of anything. It's all going to crush you if you pursue this. Pugga, please help me. Only to save lives, which is what we've been trying to do lately. When you're stuck in a bad situation, you make it good as much as you can. But I can't help you to do what's wrong, young Pear. That's what Lemuel's for. Pugga, he's not all that bad. You recoiled under his touch, young Pear. I saw that. And yet you still try to justify him? You're only seeing the side that's enamored with the potential of what you may mean to him. He's using you as much as you're using him. It's not entirely like that. Oh, but it is. What are you hoping Lemuel will give you? A position? Authority? Lemuel doesn't know how to love, and he certainly doesn't know anything about being a father. When someone doesn't turn out the way he expects, he abandons them. You're next, young Pear. But, Pugga, I really don't think it'll be like that. He really seems to think I'm what he's been looking for. Well, of course he does, because you're convenient. He'll twist anything to his advantage, manipulate any memory to get what he wants. He could make you into his first horse streak if he spent enough time on it. You think you're confused? He's created so many lies over the years that he struggles to remember what's the truth. Already he's sure that he was successful in his attack of your aunt, that she didn't fight him off. Wait, what? Thorn and Aunt Jatesy? It didn't happen. But that's not what he'll remember, nor will he recall that Shem kept an annoyingly close watch on his every move after that. Lemuel slides one story in place of another, and already he's convinced you're his own flesh and blood. But Thorn was never successful with Jatesy, thank the Creator. And no, you're not Selima's twin. Shin cringed. I know, I guess I just sort of got caught up in the moment. Just like Lemuel. Must be a family trait. Pugga? As is having a limited sense of ironic humor. Pugga, what? There was a cosmic sigh. Never mind. Young Pear, you need to head back north at the first opportunity that arises. I'm trying to convince Thorn to do that. Yes, if you can get the army heading that way, it would be best, for them and for the rest of the world. But if not, go yourself. Sargon is in far better shape than Lemuel is, but he doesn't realize that. While he's terrified of Thorn, he could easily defeat him right now. If Thorn were to march down there, Sargon would figure that out and be emboldened in his defense of Idumea. That's why it was so clever of us to convince Thorn to wait until at least Idumea was cleaned up. Let Sargon stew and worry for a while longer. Wait, that idea was all you? Of course it was. Some in the world would argue that you've got an unfair advantage in me, that I'm helping you cheat left and right. Well, that's the way of the world, and we're going to use the ways of the world to save as many lives in it as possible. Thank you, Pugga. Will you keep helping me? You have to listen to me. I'm trying. You struggle because you're torn. Forlorn, corn. Nell's right. Thorn's not much fun to rhyme. Shin smiled to the dark. I'm trying, Pugga, he said as his eyes closed in exhaustion. As long as he was still by his side, Shin had a chance. I'm trying. Captain Lick slammed his stack of notes down on the command desk. You've decided not to attack? General, I don't understand. You didn't even consult me. We had it all figured out. General Thorn let out a low, angry sigh that stopped Lick in his tirade. And since when do I consult with you about my decisions I make for my army, Captain? Have you forgotten your position? Lick breathed heavily. My position is by your side as your offensive commander, sir. Or did I misunderstand our discussions for the past 6 moons? While Thorn's glare was relentless, Lick was resolute. You misunderstood nothing, Lick. But you also don't understand the current state of our world. I plan to send more scouts out at dawn. If the villages to the east and west are intact, then we have more men with which to fortify our army. We still need a supply line, Captain. I've been in consultation with my colonels, all 8 of them. It's agreed by the hierarchy of the army that postponing this offensive is the best. In fact, as I consider it more, it's a good thing so many of us were here. Had we remained in the north, there may have been no one left to discuss this with. Those spirits of the dead soldiers, Lick, maybe they are with us. We need to pay attention to the messages they're trying to give us. Captain Lick took a step closer. Sir, I understand. I just want to make sure you're not influenced by anything less worthy. Less worthy? Such as someone lower in rank, Lick hinted. Not even an officer? Decisions made in the heat of emotion are often poorly made. Thorn narrowed his eyes. Might this have something to do with a certain corporal who believes you don't like him? Shin's just a boy, sir. I realize you've created an attachment to him, but nothing, Thorn said severely. He's hardly a boy, he's a man, and now he's lost his family. Get used to it, Lick. He's lost his father, so I'm going to take him as my son. Sir, you can't be serious. I am. What's it to you, Lick? Captain Lick scoffed. Well, I lost my father as well. Thorn snorted in derision. Years ago, from what I remember. And he was an old man. Wasn't he in his 50s when you were born? What I mean, sir, is that you barely know this corporal. He's eluded you at the fort for seasons, and now suddenly he's going to be your son? Thorn rose slightly out of his chair. I know more about Shin than I know anyone else. I know his family, his potential, and his mind. Sir, but you don't. What proof do you have aside from his features that he's who you think he is? General, for all you know, he could be one of them. Thorn plopped back into his chair with an exasperated harumph. Oh, not this again, Lick. And I thought Croup was paranoid. Lick pounded the desk. Sir, it's not paranoia. There are people from Salem living among us. They hide their identities, learn about who we are, then influence the politics. My father told us repeatedly. Sir, Miss Amory came through the forest to the grassy arena with someone. I saw her come out of that shed with a tall young man. General, I swear it must have been Shin. I've told you before, Lick. Thorn's voice was frighteningly calm. I know full well what kind of woman Amory is, and I don't wish to discuss her past, especially with you. People have sneaked off to the safer parts of the forest for privacy for decades. You claim you were at the grassy arena to find new recruits, but perhaps it was to spy on those whose love lives were more exciting than yours. Exactly what did you say to Amory that she followed you out of there? Lick straightened his back. She was asking to meet an officer and wanted to know the way to the fort. I escorted her to your fort, sir, only because I thought she would be diverting for someone. You were hoping she'd divert you, Thorne said coolly. You thought she was that sort of woman. Has it occurred to you that according to your little theory you're trying to throw together, if Shin is from Salem, so too might be Amory? Next, you'll be convinced Sargon is from your little mysterious city as well. As for the shed, I know what it's used for, but it's no longer a concern of mine. Shin was a vilehead, probably for years, ever since that place was set up. If I can forgive Amory of her past, I can certainly forgive my son for his, especially since he had no control over it. Now, do you have anything else you wish to express? Thorne's hardened expression suggested that if he did, he'd be prudent not to. Captain Lick pressed his lips firmly together. No, sir, he lied. Thorne raised his eyebrows. Then out! The next morning, on the 61st day, Corporal Shin had his kerchief tied around his nose and throat to filter out the growing stench. Despite what Thorne said, he wasn't getting used to the scent of death. He was leaving the compound with another group of soldiers to finish gleaning some fields when he heard shouts from the observation tower. In the north, a cloud of ash was rising. 3 horses were on fast approach, and Shin jogged over to meet them. Where's the general? The first rider said through his kerchief. Did he survive? Hey, wait a minute. Shin? What the slag are you doing here? Shin looked at the rider's label and grinned. Sergeant Onus! Province 8 is still there? Surprised, Onus pulled down his kerchief. We thought you were dead, boy. At least I did. Poor Croup thought you were reabsorbed into the forest or something. You vanished almost a week ago, and what are you doing here? I'm sorry, sir, I really am. I left a note, but I guess you didn't get it. I sneaked away to join the battle, hoping to see a little excitement. Well, looks like you got it, Shin. Onus shook his head, still astonished. So what about Thorne? He's alive, sir, and quite well. I'll take you to him. He grinned a welcome to the other 2 soldiers before replacing his kerchief and running back to the compound. Edge was alive. If Edge was still there, then so might be many other things, including the roots. He was shouting even before he entered the officers' quarters. General! General Onus is here from Province 8. Sir Edge is still there. His energy propelled him into the officers' breakfast room, and he crashed into Thorne, who was just rising from his chair. Sir, excuse me, Shin panted as he caught the general's dead right arm and steadied him. Grinning, he exclaimed, I'm sorry, but Sergeant Onus is here. Edge survived. Thorne grinned back and grasped Shin's shoulder. That's wonderful, son. Where is he? Shin spun around. They were right behind me. Several of the officers at the table began to chortle. Oh, wait, there they are. Sergeant, here! Onus, a squat yet stocky man, and 2 soldiers came warily to the room and stopped to salute the general. Thorne saluted back and gestured to 3 empty chairs across from him. Come in, come in. You must be starved. Sit down. We have plenty. Onus froze, startled at the general's unexpected warmth, and glanced at Shin, who nodded enthusiastically. Onus and the 2 soldiers sat down at the empty spots, pretending that they belonged at the table of officers. The officers looked at each other as well, but not because enlisted men were seated with them. They pushed plates of food toward the newcomers while waiting to see what the Thorn-Shin team would spring on them next. Shin sighed in relief as he took an empty chair next to the general. There were always empty chairs next to the general. "Ah, Sarge, it's so good to see you. What did you see? How's Province 8? The rest of the world? The scouts we sent out came back yesterday with reports that Rivers is gone. They couldn't even get to Mount Seen. What's your evaluation of the area?" Thorn leaned back and eyed Shin critically. "So are you conducting this debriefing now?" Shin's eyes flashed in alarm. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" Thorn chuckled. Every man stared at him. When they talked about it later, none of the dozen officers could remember a time they'd heard a laugh out of the general that didn't turn into a snigger. But that morning Thorn nodded, and in a friendly sort of way. "Usually, son, we ask one question at a time and let the men take a breath every now and then. So, what should the first question be?" "Status of Province 8, Sarge," Shin burst out. "Then move south." Thorn nodded at Shin and turned to Onus. The sergeant's eyes couldn't get any bigger as he said, "Province 8 is covered in ash, General, about a foot deep. But the bulk of the explosion went to the west and south of us. In fact, we had no idea it was so devastating until we started on our way down. We should have been here a day and a half ago. But, sirs," Onus looked around the table, "your scouts were right. Mount Seen is gone." The men at the table groaned in unison. "Not only that, but everything directly south of the mountain is covered. It's as if Mount Deceit exploded to the side, straight over everything. There's now a huge hill, maybe 300 paces high, and many miles long, sloping well past Rivers. We rode to the east of it and eventually ran into some scouts from Winds. That village was covered in ash, but suffered few deaths." Now the officers sighed in relief together, except for Thorn, who said nothing, but watched Onus intently. "Edge had lost about 20 people when we left," Onus told him, "and much of the livestock. But people were harvesting the remaining crops, so we have hope of making it through the season." His tone wasn't as optimistic as his words. "The same thing was going on in Winds. As to the west, we're not sure. We tried a few times to climb the new hill, but what wasn't soft mud was huge boulders and tangles of trees. That hill is probably a few miles wide as well. It covered Rivers, but started to taper off at mid-plain. Still, we saw very few people, and only a few survivors at Vines. I can't tell you what a relief it is to see so many people here at Pools. A province, too," Onus remembered to add. "It's cut us in two," Colonel Ferrum exclaimed. "This new hill? The northern half of the world is split in two by an impassable hill." "We should be hearing back from the west by this afternoon," Thorn said, not yet resigning himself to the news as the rest of his dejected officers had. "The scouts left an hour ago." "But Grasses is on the river," Colonel Glasser reminded. "Most of the villages are. I never saw that as a drawback until this week. If the mudslide split further up and went west toward Quaig—" Corporal Shin turned to the sergeant. "Could you tell if the mudslide followed the river east to Winds?" Onus shook his head. "Looks like it all went south." "Mudslide? Is that what happened?" "We never found the river again." Another officer said, "We suspect that whatever was left of those villages is either buried or on its way out to the sea past Flax. Province 13, he corrected. Onus sat back. "It's astonishing. I've never seen anything like this. Never read about anything like this." "No one has, Onus," Thorn said quietly, sounding almost ready to accept this new reality. "Almost." Most of the commanders are here, so we might as well discuss this, Thorn continued. We know Province 8 has survived, as well as the eastern half of our lands, so we need to make some decisions. Sir, asked a major, since the offensive has been called off, postponed, he clarified, may I take my men back to Scrub to see what's left? We'll send you a report as soon as we discovered what happened to the west. I'd like permission to do the same, sir, said a colonel from Quake. While I have no doubt Major Jordan has dispatched aid from Sands, I'm rather anxious to see the damage for myself. The location of his village was west of Mount Seen, but south of Mount Deceit. No one said it, but they doubted he'd ever find Quake. A few more officers voiced their requests, while the commanders from Midplain, Rivers, and Mount Seen stared blankly at the table. Sir, Corporal Shin decided it was safe for him to speak. May I return with my sergeant to Province 8, see what can be done to help with the cleanup? The officers turned to watch the response. Thorn squinted. I thought you said you don't like to clean up. I'll clean up our mess, not other people's. May I, sir? The plea sounded so much like a boy asking his father for a toy sword that Ona stared at Shin with complete befuddlement. Something more than the eruption had definitely happened here. Leaning toward the corporal, Thorn said, I'm not letting you go alone with the sergeant. I'll go with you. In fact, he gestured to everyone. I want each of you to return to your forts with your remaining men and see what can be done. Those who have lost their forts should remain here with Colonel Glasser. I have a feeling he knows of some more farms that need harvesting. Let's evaluate what we have here, then later start making assignments for those who get which wagons, horses, and supplies. I want regular reports sent to me and get me your ideas for cutting a route through that new hill to reunify the North. In a few weeks, we should be able to redistribute the remaining soldiers and then continue our plan for returning here. In the meantime, he turned back to Shin, let's get ready to go home, son. Thank you, sir, Corporal Shin grinned back to Thorn. No, Colonel Ferrum whispered to a grateful Major Gage next to him. Thank you, Shin. How was that, Paga? Shin whispered triumphantly as he jogged to the supply barns. Everyone's going home. But he didn't say exactly when now, did he? It's not over yet, young pair. Not by a long shot. So that's it? We just pack up and head back north? Captain Lick said with barely controlled rage. He knew he was within moments of being punched by General Thorn, but he did not care. There was too much at stake. Yes, Thorn said. When we are ready, we head back north. Lick leaned across the command desk. And when, sir, are we ready? A small smile was beginning to form around his mouth. When the crops are harvested, when the men are rested, and Thorn tossed the Lick puppy a bone. When Sargon knows who's in charge. Lick pounded his fist on the desk. Yes, he cried. I knew it. I knew you wouldn't back down. When's the attack? Who said anything about an attack? But you just said... Thorn's head shaking stopped him. So much you have to learn, Lick. Just because you scored the best on the battle aptitude test, you believe everything must become a battle. If Sargon's in as bad a shape as I suspect he is, he may be willing to capitulate to a truce, or even surrender when he sees it's in the best interest of his people. Wait a minute, what are you suggesting? Negotiations at the border. Sargon, me, and about 6,000 of my strongest men. Lick began to smile. And me at your side, and Shin on my other. And that's the end of that chapter. Thank you.